From time to time, we're sold a beautiful picture. Wise emperors, epic decisions, maps of the world redrawn by a single wave of the hand. The truth is that most empires didn't fall to powerful enemies or plague. They fell because of one idiotic idea inside the head of a man with absolute power, and nobody around him dared say stop. Today, 10 such ideas, 10 bosses, and 10 civilizations that paid the price. You're watching Academic Troll, the channel for people who want to know more without being bored to death in the process. Like, subscribe. Let's go. Idea number 1. Montezuma II. A god walked in for tea. Picture this. 500 armed foreigners sail to your shores, and you greet them with flowers, gold, and the finest rooms in your capital, because you're pretty sure one of them is a god. That is exactly what Montezuma II did in 1519. The Aztec Empire, millions of people, golden pyramids, a metropolis built on water that European explorers would later call the Venice of the New World, welcomed Hernan Cortez and his 500 soldiers, a couple of cannons, and a staggering amount of nerve. Montezuma's brain stalled trying to categorize Cortez. Enemy? Envoy? Deity? And so he personally threw open the doors of his empire, the way a child opens the front door to a smiling stranger. Gifts, banquets, the keys to the capital. The exact reason for this hospitality is still debated by historians. 2 years later, the Aztec Empire was smoldering ruins. The Spanish were swimming in gold. Montezuma is first on our list, possibly the most expensive religious misunderstanding in the history of civilization. Emperor Valens, a battle born from pure ego. Valens could have won. He had everything. An army, a plan, reinforcements on the way. What he lacked was the willingness to wait 24 hours. 378 AD. The Eastern Roman Empire is cracking. The Goths are methodically looting the Balkans. Steady, patient, as if someone had handed them a written permit. Valens has a solid plan. Wait for his nephew Gratian to arrive with backup, and then crush the barbarians together. But then the ego kicks in. Why share the glory? I'll handle this myself. He throws his army into battle at Adrianople, like a guy 3 drinks in who needs to prove a point. The result? Valens himself dies on the field. 40,000 legionaries are left in the grass, and the Eastern army ceases to exist as a fighting force. The barbarians grasp the key insight. Rome can be beaten, and they start doing it with enthusiasm. One battle, born from impatience and wounded pride, became the point of no return for an entire civilization. A man with power and no brakes is more dangerous than any enemy at the gates. Idea number 3. Atahualpa, showing up without security. 168 men captured the largest empire in the Americas, not through military genius, but because the living god who ruled it walked out to meet them alone. The Inca Empire was operating at a level that would make modern logistics managers weep. Thousands of miles of perfectly maintained roads, suspension bridges over sheer mountain drops, a massive professional army, a capital city literally stuffed with gold. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro arrives with 168 conquistadors. Atahualpa, the supreme Inca, a god made flesh, looks at this handful of strangers and thinks, what exactly can they do to me? He rides into the town of Cajamarca for a meeting with almost no bodyguards, surrounded only by unarmed noblemen in ceremonial dress. Pizarro springs an ambush. Within half an hour, the Inca entourage is massacred, and the emperor himself is taken prisoner in the middle of the square, like a common pickpocket. The most powerful empire in the Western Hemisphere surrendered to a handful of men on horses because the man at the top decided he was too important to be afraid. Confidence isn't a status. Confidence without intelligence is an obituary. Idea number 4. Shah Muhammad II, the most expensive middle finger in history. The Shah cut off the envoy's ears and nose and sent him back to Genghis Khan, with his regards. It was, arguably, the most self-destructive diplomatic communication in the history of the world. 1218. The Khwarezmian Empire is the fat cat of the Silk Road. Lavish cities, booming trade, a formidable army, and a Shah who genuinely believes he is the most important man on the planet. Genghis Khan sends a peaceful trade delegation, just to buy goods and establish relations. Shah Muhammad II decides to make a statement about who runs things. He orders the merchants killed and sends the sole survivor back to Genghis with his ears and nose removed. Take that back to your master. Genghis Khan receives this message, reads it quietly, and says one word to his generals. 2 years later, the Khwarezmian Empire has been erased from the map. The Shah is hiding in a cave on a small island in the Caspian Sea, dying in poverty. The truth is, Genghis Khan didn't go looking for conquests. People kept provoking him, and every single time, he responded. Idea number 5. Napoleon, quick summer trip to Russia. Of the 600,000 soldiers Napoleon marched into Russia, fewer than 50,000 made it back. This wasn't a military defeat. It was a logistical death sentence with imperial ambitions attached. 1812. Napoleon is master of nearly all of Europe, a military genius feared by every crowned head on the continent. And then comes the idea that military academies would spend the next 2 centuries studying as the definitive example of what not to do. Conquer Russia. The plan relied on a lightning victory. Napoleon expected to wrap it up before autumn. Every general quietly signaled that this was a catastrophically bad idea. The distances were impossible, the supply lines couldn't stretch that far, and the Russians would simply retreat and burn everything behind them. Napoleon waved them off with the classic, "I've decided. We're doing this." The army marched in during summer, stretched across thousands of miles, never found the decisive battle it was looking for, got stuck in Moscow. Then winter came, and the army dissolved faster than ice cream in a microwave. 2 years later, abdication, Elba, Waterloo. A genius who stops listening to the word no stops being a genius. He just becomes a very confident man walking toward a disaster. Idea number 6. Honorius. Execute your best general. While the barbarians were tearing toward Rome, Emperor Honorius was sitting safely in Ravenna raising chickens. This isn't a metaphor. It's a documented hobby. Early 5th century, the Western Roman Empire is fracturing. Barbarians at every border, the economy in freefall, the court drowning in intrigue. The one man still holding this wreck together is Stilicho, a brilliant general who had spent years fighting off every army that decided Rome was there for the taking. Honorius listens to palace gossip and delivers his executive decision. What if Stilicho wants to overthrow him? Execute him. In 408 AD, Rome's best defender is put to death. 2 years later, the Visigoths walk calmly into Rome and sack the Eternal City for the first time in 800 years. Methodically, unhurried, taking everything that isn't bolted down. Honorius stays in Ravenna and does nothing. Honorius didn't execute a general. He executed the empire itself, then survived and went back to his chickens. If you recognize this management style, feel free to leave a comment. This type of boss hasn't gone extinct. Idea number 7. Vortigern. Let's hire the Saxons. They seem friendly. One unpaid invoice to mercenaries is why Britain is called England today. That is not an exaggeration. It is the literal origin of the word. 5th century. The Romans have just left Britain, taking their roads and their warm sense of order with them. The Picts are raiding from the north. King Vortigern comes up with an elegant solution. Hire Saxon mercenaries, give them land and money, let them handle security. The Saxons arrive, help out, then ask the obvious question, where's our pay? Vortigern responds with the timeless classic, we're going through a tough patch, stay positive. The Saxons took offense. They invited their cousins, brothers, uncles, anyone who could hold a sword, and instead of leaving, began annexing Britain as if they'd been handed an open-ended lease with no exit clause. Within a few generations, most of Britain had become Anglo-Saxon. Outsourcing without a contract isn't cost-cutting, it's a change of ownership. Idea number 8. Kaiser Wilhelm II, the most expensive blank check in history. The First World War started with one line in a telegram. Do whatever you need to. Germany has your back. The Kaiser didn't write it after weeks of deliberation. He wrote it over breakfast. 1914. Europe is sitting on a powder keg. Austria-Hungary wants to punish Serbia for the assassination of the Archduke. In Wilhelm's head, a clean, simple plan. Small, quick war. Austria handles Serbia in a few weeks, everyone gets frightened, Germany emerges as the undisputed power of Europe. Reality had other plans. Russia backs Serbia. Germany declares war on Russia. France jumps in. Britain enters over Belgium. And suddenly it's a 4-year industrial slaughterhouse nobody designed and nobody knows how to stop. Millions dead. 4 empires collapse simultaneously. German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Ottoman. Versailles. And a straight line to the rise of Hitler. Wilhelm wanted a small war. He got a world war, with the destruction of his own empire as the finale. Idea number 9. Louis XVI. Let's call a meeting and change nothing. Louis XVI could have died peacefully in his bed. Instead, he became the first notable client of France's so-called national razor, the guillotine. And all because he called people together to talk, then refused to say anything worth hearing. 1789. France is drowning in debt. The population is hungry and furious. Taxes are crushing the poor while the nobility pays almost nothing. Louis XVI convenes the Estates General for the first time in 175 years, and everyone arrives expecting real change. Lower taxes, make the aristocracy contribute, give ordinary people a voice. Instead, the nobility moves to protect the old order and squeeze out more money without giving anything back. The people respond briefly and loudly, storming the Bastille, the National Assembly, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. And then, the guillotine. Revolutions don't start from poverty. They start from the moment people realize they were heard, they were promised, and then they were lied to. This isn't a story about a French king. It's an instruction manual for destroying trust. Idea number 10. Nicholas II, God will sort it out. In July 1914, Nicholas II received from his ministers an exhaustive list of reasons why going to war right now would be a catastrophe. He listened carefully and ordered mobilization anyway. The Russian Empire at this point was a pressure cooker of social tensions that had been building for decades, with revolutionary sentiment that had been boiling for years. Every reasonably competent advisor was saying the same thing in unison. Entering a major European war at this particular moment is a very bad idea. The army isn't ready, the supply chain is a disaster, the economy is on the edge. Nicholas delivers his signature line. We will defend our Slavic brothers. God is on our side. We'll push through. 3 years of pointless carnage, millions dead, the country in ruins, the population starving, faith in the government completely gone. February 1917, revolution. October, the Bolsheviks seize power. July 1918, the entire royal family is executed in a basement in Yekaterinburg. 300 years of the Romanov dynasty ended because of one stubborn act of wishful thinking. The most expensive gamble in Russian history. What we are left with? Here's the most uncomfortable truth. Not one of these empires was destroyed by an enemy. Every single one was destroyed by a man with absolute power and one stupid idea that nobody around him dared call stupid. This isn't a story about bad rulers. It's a story about how power kills feedback and how the absence of feedback kills everything else. The deeper historians dig, the more avoidable it all looks. History isn't a record of wisdom. It's a record of how much a single moment of unchecked stupidity can cost. That's all from me. Other channels usually spend the outro begging you to like, subscribe, and comment. I won't even mention it. I'll just make the next video. You'll figure it out.